Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel and another tutorial. Today I am super happy to be making with you the Gianna backpack by Tobi Stylx bag patterns. This is such an amazing pattern. I learned so much from this. There's a completely different style of putting it together that I have never done before, meaning it doesn't have gusset pieces and it doesn't have a bottom piece. The back and main panels are cut in such a way that when you go to sew it together, it creates those two things that you usually have with a backpack style bag. Let me show you some of the features of this bag before we get into the guts of this bag. So underneath this flap, we have these two very large, kind of accordion style slip pockets, I guess. They're very roomy. What's really cool is on the back here, you can have this bag as a crossbody bag or as a backpack. But what's really cool is you can use the crossbody strap as your backpack straps. One strap, not two, one strap. All you do is you make a crossbody strap, you make it as large as it possibly can be, clip one of the lobster clasps here, bring it up and around through the top here. Make sure your hardware fits through there. I originally started with a 1-inch rectangular ring there, but my hardware wouldn't fit through, so I switched to this 1 1/4 inch circle ring, and it worked perfectly to get that up and through. And then you put the other side on there, and seriously, like one strap to make backpacks, like a lot less hardware sitting on your back when you have two separate ones. So that is an absolutely amazing thing that I learned on this bag. Double zipper pull. Now on the inside, I myself added a zipper pocket. Be very, very careful with the placement of this. I came very close to having it into my bound edge. So make sure you measure really, really good. That is not part of the pattern. I just added that in because that's how I do my bags. And then I put a large slip pocket on the other side. My faux leather is the new, I believe it's called Gulf Coast Teal from Amora Faux Leather from Emmaline bags. I use pretty and pink sew foam in this. Oh yes, and this is a binding finish. And it's a very, very, you can see it here, a very unique binding finish, especially on the front side. The hardest part of this bag was the front side binding, but it really wasn't too bad. It was just different than what I was used to doing. Because this back panel, you can see here, the back panel actually folds down and becomes the bottom, and the front folds over to become the gusset. It's really, really ingenious way of doing this. I really enjoyed it, and I love that I learned something doing this bag. Okay, as I was saying, I use pretty and pink sew foam in this. All of my cotton pieces are backed with EB Fuse Lite from Emmaline bags. The pretty and pink sew foam is from Galaxy Kustoms. All of my hardware is from Emmaline bags. My zipper is from Blue Cala. My zipper pulls, I believe they were from Zipper Valley. They could have been from Blue Cala, but I did get a box from Zipper Valley and they could have been from there too. So I don't remember if it was Blue Cala or Zipper Valley for my dangling hearts. One of the two for sure. The only thing I did different was in the pattern, it calls for 3/4 inch straps and such, like this handle is, but I only had two 3/4 inch D-rings and I didn't have a 3/4 inch swivel. So my hardware for my crossbody strap, I made it into a 1 inch so I could use that hardware. And then again, I changed this out so my hardware would fit better through that ring there. Thank you, Tobi, for allowing me to do this tutorial and the launch video for this. It's such an honor. Yeah, what else do I need to say about this bag? I think that is it. Let's get to making this bag.
You're going to need some rivets, some number 5 zipper tape, your nameplate. I'm adding in strap ends, 2 swivel clasps. In all, you are going to need 4 D-rings, a rectangle ring, and a slider, 2 magnetic snaps, and 2 zipper pulls. Okay, you're also going to need some binding, whichever your preference is. This is for my overlay piece, my handle, 5 connector pieces, your crossbody strap, your slip pocket, your number 2 zipper panel, your flap piece, your exterior, and your lining, your number 1 zipper panel piece, exterior and lining, your main panel, exterior and lining, your front pockets, exterior and lining, your main panel, exterior and lining. Again, all my lining is backed with Fuse Lite. And you're also going to need some foam. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do my crossbody strap and my handle off camera. If you need classes on do that, they are in the description below. Okay, so let's prepare our 5 connector pieces. So I've drawn a line down the center of all of them. I've said mine are different sizes just because I am just utilizing hardware I had on hand, so I had to adjust some of the sizes. You're going to take the long edge and fold them down into that center line, and then along those folds you are going to top stitch with a 1/8 of an inch seam allowance on all 5 pieces. Okay, now you're going to take your main panel back piece, your 2 zipper panel pieces, these are the exterior pieces, your flap exterior and your main panel, and you are going to back them all with your foam. Okay, so let's do our magnetic snap. So I am using my pattern piece here and just punching the holes in for my snap placement on my lining side of my flap. So on this flap, I am going to be installing the male side of my magnetic snaps. And then I'm also going to be backing them with Decovil Heavy, just little scraps to make sure, just to give them a little extra stability. And I like to back those prongs with some duct tape or Gorilla Tape. Then you're going to take this and your exterior flap piece, put them right sides together, secure them together with clips. And then we're going to start about here and here. We are going to leave an opening for turning and go all the way around in between those spaces with a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, then once that's done, on these corners, I am just going to cut them on an angle here without cutting my stitching. And along my curves, I'm taking my pinking shears just to get a nice round curve around there, take away some of that foam bulk, and then turn it right side out. If you used all cotton, you can go ahead and press this nice and flat. Make sure you push all of your seams out nice and taut, especially in those top corners. Then what we're going to do is that opening, we're going to fold down that 1/4 of an inch. I'm just cutting away some of my foam bulk here. 1/4 inch to enclose those raw edges of that opening. Then you're going to go ahead and top stitch all the way around with an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so now for our external pocket pieces, from the left and the right side, you're going to measure in 4 inches into the center and 2 inches down and make a mark. And this is for the female snap side placement. So in those 2 spots, you're going to go ahead and install your female side of the snaps, back them with some Decovil Heavy as well, and some duct tape, like I've done here. Now you're going to take this just like the flap. Actually, first, we're going to measure in 2 inches from the left and the right side. And that is going to mark the opening we are going to leave for turning. Put it right sides together with a lining piece and clip them together. Okay, and now we're going to go ahead and sew all the way around, but not in that space, with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, so I've done that. So just like we did with the flap, I'm just going to snip my corners on an angle without cutting my stitches, and then turn this right side out. Again, you can, if you've used cotton, you can go ahead and press this so it's nice and pressed. Otherwise, as I'm doing here, just poke all those seams out the best that you can so they are nice and sharp in those corners. Okay, and just like we did with the flap, we're going to fold in that opening, fold them in by 1/4 inch to enclose those raw edges. Okay, then we're going to top stitch this with an 1/8 inch seam allowance just along the top. And that'll close up that opening. Now, if I was to do this again, I think I would do it with the lining being another piece of my vinyl, just so the pocket lining didn't show through on the bottom, even though it looks fine as well. Okay, so now we want to find the center of this pocket. So I'm just double checking that I am indeed center with my ruler here. Which I am. And then I'm going to draw my center line up the middle. Okay, and then on the front main piece, you want to find your centers as well. Make sure it is centered and for sure. Then I'm going to take my erasable pen and draw that center line. And this is just going to help us line up our pockets on here nice and center, so that you're going to measure 1 inch up. And that's going to be the placement of our pocket. So I'm going to draw that 1 inch up from the bottom line, so I can place it nice and straight, line up those center lines of the pocket and that, and top stitch right down there, just as we have done here. Now from each end of our pocket, we want to measure in 1 inch, 2 inch, and then 6 inches and 7 inches on both sides. Again, we have top stitched down that center line, so our pocket is secure in the center. And now what we're doing is just making the pocket gussets. Now you may have to, I had to adjust it just a little bit to make it match up with my snaps. So kind of before you sew anything in place, make sure you check your flap and make sure your snaps are the right distance apart. You are going to fold these lines in together. So I'm folding at the 7 inch line here, right sides together to make that center. And on the exterior, you can see at the 2 inch line, I folded it wrong sides together, like so. Do it on this side, the 7 inch line, we're going to fold in. And on the outside at the 2 inch line, we're going to fold it in wrong sides together. Okay, you're going to make sure that's even on the top as well. And if your snaps don't match up once you try this, just kind of make the folds a little wider or a little less until they do. Okay, so now I'm just going to take some double-sided tape on the wrong side of one of the ends here, because you're going to fold this up so it matches evenly with that fold at the 2 inch mark. And then I'm going to kind of place it down and stick it down to my main panel just to hold it in place there, because I can't use pins. I've already done so on the other side as well, like this. And we're going to go ahead and top stitch down those sides first and then across the bottom. So first, let's do the sides. This was my first time making pockets like this, and I think I really want to make some of my lining pockets like this. I love how deep the pockets end up being and how wide they end up being. So that's the first side done. Let's do the other side. Again, you're not doing the top fold, you're just doing the fold that we have stuck to the bottom, or stuck to the main panel of the bag. Okay, and once that's done, we're going to close up the bottom. So we're going to top stitch all along the bottom of that pocket. And those are done. Okay, so we're going to drop a 1/2 inch from the top of our pocket, and this is going to be the placement for our flap. So I'm just going to double check. You can see that my magnetic snaps are the same width apart, which is good. On the right side of the flap, on the long side, I'm going to take a little bit of double-sided tape. Only do this if your machine can handle it. And I'm going to put it right sides together along that long side on that 1/2 inch line we just drew. Once again, I'm going to double check that my snaps match up, which they do. And then we're going to go ahead and sew across the bottom where we just stuck down right here with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So that's all done, and our pockets are done. I also went ahead and put my nameplate on. Now I'm going to take my lining panel. I've already done my slip pocket. If you'd like to know how I do that, that is down below in the description. I'm going to put these wrong sides together, clip them in place, and then baste them together. And baste all the way around with an 1/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, so now let's work on our zipper panel. So again, I'm using double-sided tape. If your machine cannot handle this, go ahead and use clips instead. So we're working on our rounded side of our zipper panel, because our zipper panels are different. I have my lining right side up. I have my zipper tape right side up. I've kept my tape a little bit longer so I can keep my zipper pulls out of the way because they are kind of big and dangly. On my exterior piece, I am putting some more double-sided tape on the straight edge, and I am going to put this right sides together with the zipper tape in that lining panel, sandwiching that zipper tape in the middle. Again, you can use clips or pins to hold this in place as well. Just make sure you are not puncturing your vinyl. Okay, so now we're going to sew those together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I have put my zipper foot on just to help make sure I'm nice and close to that zipper and that I get a nice straight zipper. And then you're going to want to place these two panels, press them away from the zipper. Again, I use double-sided tape to do this. You can finger press it. If you've used all cotton, you can go ahead and take it to the iron to press it that way. I'm going to push this away from my zipper nice and taut. Do the same on the lining side, bringing the lining and the exterior wrong sides together. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and we are going to top stitch down the front, and the 3 raw sides we are going to baste in place with an 1/8 inch seam allowance. Now we're going to repair our other zipper panel. So what we want to do is we want to install our hidden connectors. I do have a more in-depth class on how to do hidden connectors down below in the description. I do show you what I'm going to do here, but I'm not going to explain in great detail what I'm doing. You can catch the full class for that down below. So I'm measuring in 2 inches from each side and marking where I'm going to make my slit for my hidden connectors. Now, one thing you want to make sure is that your D-rings are going to be facing the center of this, not to the exterior, but to the center. So I've put my little slits in there. I'm taking my connector, I have my wrong side up, and along the slit where the connector is, you want to make sure you're not closing up the hole of that slit. You're just right above that slit. I am sewing that in place. And then I'm taking my D-ring and I'm sticking it back through that slit like so. And then I'm going to top stitch right along the bottom of that slit to secure that in place. Again, you can see how my D-rings are going towards the center of the zipper panel, and that is exactly what we want. And again, if you want a more in-depth class on how to do that, I explain it in more detail down below. Okay, so now we are going to do the other zipper panel the exact same way that we did the curvy zipper panel and install it onto the opposite side of our zipper tape. Make sure it's nice and centered. Lining side, right side up, and our half completed zipper panel right side up. And same with our other exterior piece. Putting it right sides together with our zipper tape. Then you're going to sew it together and top stitch it exactly like we did with the other side of the zipper panel. Okay, so that's done. So I've pulled my zipper pulls into the middle and I can cut off the excess zipper tape I have here. Just like so. Okay, so let's work on our back piece. So now we want to find our strap placement. Now I'm using my pattern piece. I've cut little slits in the marks where we put our connectors as per the pattern. So I'm just going to mark that with my invisible pen on the back of my piece here. Now I'm going to take this is where I opted to use the O-ring instead of the rectangular ring, just because my hardware would not fit through the rectangular ring because I went to 1 inch. So I am now using the O-ring. So I'm going to take my connector piece. I'm going to use a little bit of double-sided tape on the bottom here. Put my O-ring through the connector, bring it wrong sides together, matching up that short end, and a little more double-sided tape to hold this in place right at that center mark. Now you can definitely hold these in place at the machine when you're doing it if you want to not use double-sided tape. Now for our handle, we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to put a little bit of double-sided tape on each side of the handle, and each side of the handle is going to mark at those other 2 marks. Just make sure it's not twisted and it's going the right way. Then you're going to go ahead and baste these in place with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so now for our overlay, it's done exactly like the connectors where we have a center line and we're going to bring those long edges into that center line. Then on our back panel, we're going to take our piece again and we are going to use the markings to show the placement of where we're going to put this overlay. I'm going to put some double-sided tape down the middle, and you could do this on a domestic machine because that double-sided tape is not going to get caught in your stitching at all. And then we are going to stick this down in between those lines from the pattern that we put on here, and that'll enclose the raw edges of our connectors and our handle. Then we'll take this to the machine and we will top stitch along the top and the bottom of that overlay. Now while we're here, I'm going to also put in our D-rings for the backpack straps. So on each side, I'm going to measure up 6 inches. We're going to prepare our D-ring connectors in the exact same way we did with the O-ring connector at the top of the back panel. And then we're going to place these with the D-rings facing towards the center of the bag, right on top of that 6-inch mark. Make sure your D-rings are facing into the center of the bag because you don't want them to be sewn out of the bag. Okay, so I've gone ahead and I've done that, and I've basted the D-rings on, and I also went ahead and installed some rivets backed with some Faux Lite for extra decoration and extra security. Now, I've already gone and done my zipper pocket. Again, that's a Brandy thing. That's not in the pattern. On my lining piece, we're going to put them wrong sides together, just like we did with the front pieces, clip them around, and then baste them together with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so now the fun part. We have to install this gusset onto the front part. So you want to make sure that match them up like this, and then you know you have it the right way around that curve. Start with pinning. What we will be doing is creating a gusset here. So pin those together and work your way all the way around. Now those little curvy corners, that was the hardest part to sew. So just take them slow when you sew. Use lots of clips so these stay in place really well. And clip it all the way around. Undoing the zipper does help a lot. Just make sure if you haven't done any stay stitches that you don't do it all the way to the end and lose your zipper. So again, here's that tricky little corner, but it does fit perfectly. Okay, then looks good. We're gonna take this to the machine and sew along there with 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Again, the trickiest part is right at the part we're at right now, right where it's straight by the zipper and then has that little bit of a curve. Just take it slow. Make sure you know nothing is sliding out of the way. I am on my cylinder arm, but this is how I would do this on my flatbed as well. It would just be more on the table than what I am right now. You can take that corner nice and slow as I'm doing right here. And then you can breathe easy as you go over this zipper panel because it's quite easy to sew along here until you get down to that other rounded corner. This is the hardest part of making this whole bag, I found. Those little corners, but if you take them slow and you have lots of clips, you should be able to get through it just fine. And this was my first time making the bag, as most of my tutorials are. I like to do my tutorials the first time making the bag so I can help explain some of the obstacles I came across when I make a bag for the first time, in hopes that it would help you when you make your bag for the first time. Okay, so that's all done. So I'm just going to kind of fold it right side out, make sure everything was caught, make sure everything is good, and it is. So put it wrong side out again. And now I'm going to go ahead and do my bias tape binding. You go ahead and do whatever kind of binding you like. This is my preferred method. If you would like to see how I do it, I do have a class for that down below in the description. So again, I'm going to pop it out once my binding is done and make sure everything is good, and it is. Now we are going to take our back piece. Now you can see with the front piece, it formed our gusset, which is really cool. Now this back piece is going to form our bottom. So we're going to match at the bottom of this with the bottom of our main panel. And we are going to clip all of the raw edges together. And as we do this, you are going to see how it starts to take shape and how the shape of that front panel and everything is going to form the bottom of the bag. This just completely amazed me. I was just so in awe of this technique. I have never seen anything like it before. You can see here, now we have formed a gusset. You can see how the bottom is forming. It's super cool. And this back panel is much easier to sew together. When you get to this binding part that we are going to be double binding and sewing over, I was kind of trying to point your bound edge towards the bottom. Okay, so this is what it looks like all clipped together. And we're going to go ahead and sew it together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then go ahead and do binding just like we did with the front. Okay, so we have it fully sewn together and fully bound. Once it looks good, you can go ahead and turn it right side out. This is such a quick sew too. I'm in absolute awe of this bag and its construction. I just love it. Press out your seams. Look how great that looks. Okay, now all that's left to do is you can use this as a crossbody strap, but I'll show you how to make it into a backpack strap. So you want to make it as long as you possibly can. Again, you can shorten this up. It's an adjustable backpack strap as well. Clip one of the swivel clasps onto a D-ring. And I found to bring it, at first I tried to do it under like this, but that's not quite right. That'll be awkward. So put it through like this, through the top of your O-ring or rectangular ring or what, D-ring, whatever you chose, and clip it into the other side. And voila, look, we have a backpack strap with one strap only. And we're done.
All right, that's it. That's all, folks. What did you think of that binding? It was really different how the binding or sewing it all together created the bottom of the gusset. It was really cool. Yeah, I really hope you liked this tutorial. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please do subscribe. If you're interested in taking any of my classes on the membership side, you can check that out when you go to my homepage there. If you'd like to support my channel further, you can buy me a coffee. That link is down below. And until the next time, I will catch you guys later. Bye.